Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about the importance of the multiverse. So, the multiverse is incredibly important in Dungeons and Dragons. So, let's give an example of what is the multiverse in Dungeons and Dragons. Well, let's talk about the Soul Ring. The Soul Ring is a Magic the Gathering world artifact that then was brought into Baldur's Gate, Forgotten Realms. Soul Ring is established in Dungeons and Dragons through the Baldur's Gate set, and then the Soul Ring is found in the Warhammer world through the Magic the Gathering cards. So the Magic the Gathering cards connect Forgotten Realms, Warhammer world, and Dungeons and Dragons, not by canon, but by narrative, lore, and logic, right? And it's really quite fascinating, and so we have this concept of a multiverse, right? And the multiverse across Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons has been built for over 10 years, and there's modules that are made, there's books that are made, there are card sets that are made that make it very clear that characters and equipment and locations and events and relationships can go across quite freely across these this multiverse that transverses both Magic and Dungeons and Dragons, right? And so it's very helpful from a narrative perspective and a lore perspective, but I have this supposition that Dungeons and Dragons is the most powerful way is the most secular, powerful way for humans to understand themselves, right? And that Dungeons and Dragons is actually improving humanity sequentially, incrementally, okay? And I think the multiverse is part of this, right? So if you understand Dungeons and Dragons, I think you fundamentally become a kinder, more respectful, more honorable human, right? And so let me explain how, right? So I read this fantastic story in the New York Times by a journalist who is just sans Dungeons and Dragons. He doesn't understand Dungeons and Dragons, and so I think he attached some cruelty to some of his recent reporting that would have been avoided if he understood humanity through Dungeons and Dragons, right? So let me explain how, right? So he doesn't understand the multiverse, right? So basically it was a fascinating article. It was very well written from a journalistic perspective. It just wasn't kind or tolerant it wasn't kind or tolerant or respectful and it didn't honor the person it spoke about, okay? All right, so there's this New York Times crime reporter, and he did this fascinating story on a gentleman in New York. His name is Walter Reed, and this gentleman calls 911, has called 911, New York 911, thousands of times, okay? And he reports crimes that happen at 312 Riverside Drive. And they no longer send any emergency services. They don't send police, they don't send ambulance, they don't send fire trucks to 312 Riverside Drive because 312 Riverside Drive cannot be found anywhere in New York. So he is reporting an address that doesn't exist, right, in New York as it stands today. Okay? So immediately this crime reporter is like, I don't understand what Walter Reed is doing. He has mental health issues, right? And it's not just that reporter saying that, right? It is also the New York City government saying, we don't understand what you're doing. You have mental health issues, right? But if you understand Dungeons and Dragons, you are familiar with the multiverse, right? And the multiverse talked about in Dungeons and Dragons links to a scientific concept. And for decades, science has been saying there's significant proof that there is a multiverse, right? And many scientists are like, this isn't the only universe. Our universe, in every single detail, just shifted 1 centimeter on a single parameter or a single attribute. It's all the same except one thing is different. There are many, many, many multiverses, right? And so the multiverse exists in Dungeons and Dragons, and because it exists there, I looked up with a word, and when I looked up the word multiverse, it's not fantasy. The concept of a multiverse is discussed openly in science, right? Like, many people believe. In fact, that's it's exactly one of the reasons why the super collider exists, is to continue to explore this idea of multiverse as a scientific concept, right? So what I think is happening, and I think there should have just been more kindness, more tolerance, more patience, more respect, more honor put on Walter Reed. I think it's possible that he's reporting things that are happening on a different multiverse, right? On a different universe, I think he may be able to perceive something that is happening elsewhere, or every elsewhere, right? And so I think, once you understand Dungeons and Dragons, it just puts a kindness with you. It puts a tolerance with you. It puts a respect with you. It puts an honoring with you, where you're like, hey, slow your roll, man. Like, you can say this guy has mental health issues, or you could just think of the scientific possibility that he is simply perceiving another universe. For us in Dungeons and Dragons, hey, multiverse is a scientific concept. It's a concept that we deal with in fantasy as well. We don't rush to say, hey, this person needs mental health. This person's mental health is broken. And I think this is a really big thing for the future of humanity, is when we run into something we don't understand, we're very quick to say, oh, you believe differently than me? Well, your mental health is broken. No, it's rude, it's impatient, it's small-minded, and it's cruel. And I think everybody who's dealing with Walter Reed right now is, their behavior is repugnant, right? And the reality is he deserved more time, more attention, more understanding. And I think the reality is, I think he could. People are saying, oh, your mental health is broken, you perceive less. No, maybe there's a probability or a possibility that he perceives more than you, right? And the only thing that's broken here is your emotional resonance. All that's my humble opinion. I'd love to hear what you think. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.